Good day, everyone. I wish you peace and strength wherever you are. That morning, something unspoken lingered in the hospital air, a stillness that crept into every corridor, every whisper. It was as if even the walls had paused, bracing themselves for the weight of what was to come. No one expected it, not the nurses, not the physicians, not even the board of directors. But in front of them all, CEO James, calm yet visibly torn, delivered a decision that sent a wave of shock through the hospital. It wasn't a simple medical consent. It was a statement, a rupture. And what made it even more seismic was not the act itself, but the truth that lay behind it. A past buried for decades had clawed its way back to the surface. A woman once erased from Too Deep's life had returned. Her biological mother. Her name was Lan. She hadn't come bearing love. She came bearing documents, secrets, and a plea wrapped in sorrow. James, the man who loved Too Deep more than his own breath, had chosen to protect her not by shielding her from this truth, but by confronting it. And as he stood at her side, he too became a vessel for wounds that refused to stay closed. Inside the hall, tension thickened like storm clouds before a summer downpour. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances. Doctors murmured behind clipboards, and room 402 became the epicenter of quiet chaos. James stood by the window, his back straight, fists clenched. His eyes weren't looking at the skyline, they were locked on memories. On the moment everything unraveled, 24 hours earlier, Too Deep lay pale and fragile on the hospital bed. Machines hummed softly, counting the seconds her body fought to stay in this world. Her soul, however, seemed adrift, and then, James signed a form that gave legal authority over her medical decisions not to her guardians. Not to himself, but to the woman who had abandoned her at birth. The moment the pen left the paper, the hospital broke into whispers. Lan had returned like a monsoon, uninvited, undeniable. Everyone thought she was just another stranger. Until she spoke. I am her mother, she said. I gave her away. But now, I want to save her. The legal team scrambled. The physicians balked. James stood still, eyes filled with guarded pain and fear. Because Too Deep had only just begun to recover from the emotional shock of seeing her mother again. And now, that same mother demanded the power to decide whether she lived or died. Later that evening, Lan walked into room 402. Her hands trembled as she sat beside her daughter. She pulled out a worn notebook, its pages yellowed with time, and began to read poems. Lines written during her pregnancy, verses never shared. Words soaked in regret, tucked away for years in a wooden box with silence and shame. And as her voice quivered through the verses, something flickered in Too Deep's expression. A twitch, a flutter, a tear. She hears you, James whispered from the corner. Lan turned to him, tears pooling in her eyes. I don't deserve to be here. It's not about deserving, James said gently. It's about showing up. You left her once. Don't do it again. I won't, she said, almost a vow. Behind them, nurses peered through the glass, stunned. The man who had every reason to hate had chosen forgiveness, and the woman everyone wanted to blame came not to excuse her past, but to be present now. James stayed at Too Deep's bedside long after the lights dimmed. Rain tapped softly against the window. Lan, too, stayed. She barely moved, afraid she might scare her daughter away again. She whispered fragments of memories, the kicks she felt during the last trimester. The lullabies she sang alone, the scent of a blanket she folded but never wrapped around her child. James listened, quiet, guarded. He didn't trust her. Not fully. But there was something raw in her voice, something that told him, like him, she was just trying to make peace with a story too painful to carry alone. As dawn cracked the sky, Too Deep stirred. It was subtle, a blink, a breath. But James leapt forward. Too deep, he whispered. Her eyes opened, confused, unfocused. Then they met Lan's. A pause. A long, trembling silence. You? Lan's hands shook. Yes. It's me. I'm your mother. Too Deep didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stared, then turned to the window. Why no? She asked, barely above a breath. Lan stepped closer. Because I was a coward, she said. I waited too long. But not a day passed where I didn't think of you. Too Deep looked at her again. You abandoned me. I know, Lan replied. And nothing I say can undo that. But I want to be here now, not to erase the past, but to be part of your present. If you'll let me. James watched her, searching Too Deep's face. He saw the storm, grief and yearning fighting behind her eyes. Then he saw something else. Exhaustion. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said. You don't have to, Lan whispered. I'll wait. As long as it takes. That evening, James wheeled her into the garden. The air smelled of jasmine and damp earth. Flowers still wet from the rain. She's not the only one who's scared, Too Deep said. I know, James replied. What if I let her in, and she breaks me again? Then I'll be here to hold the pieces. And she said nothing more. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin with a decision. It begins with someone staying long enough for silence to feel safe again. Lan returned every day. Sometimes with tea, sometimes with old photos, sometimes with nothing but presence. And little by little, Too Deep stopped turning away. There were no dramatic reconciliations. No tearful embraces, just glances, questions, shared memories of music boxes and lullabies. From those fragments, something began to grow. Not what had been lost, but something new. Something real. Weeks passed. Too Deep's body recovered slowly, but her heart. Slower still. James stayed, always, bringing warm porridge each morning, reading soft stories each night. Never rushing, never demanding forgiveness, just staying. One afternoon, she turned to her mother. "Why did you leave me?" Lan answered, quietly. "I was young. I was scared. Your father left." "I thought I wasn't enough. You could have tried," Too Deep whispered. "I know. And I regret not fighting harder every day." Then Too Deep asked, "Do you still have the poem?" Lan reached into her bag and handed her the notebook. Too Deep held it to her chest. She opened it, and the scent of ink, paper, and something deeply maternal washed over her like a forgotten lullaby. That night, under the soft glow of a bedside lamp, Too Deep looked at James. "You did something no one else would have done," she said. "You let her back in." He took her hand. "Because I know what it's like to be left without answers." "And you deserve answers, even if they hurt." She blinked through tears. "You're not just the one who stayed, you're the one who understood." James smiled, eyes damp. "Then maybe, one day, you'll let me be more." She didn't respond. But she didn't let go of his hand, and for James, that was enough. The hospital still whispered. Rumors floated. Some questioned James's decision, but none of them saw what he saw. Too Deep, finally beginning to heal. Because healing isn't always about being fixed. It's about being allowed the space to become whole. Love, as she discovered, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's broken. Sometimes it returns in unfamiliar forms, asking not for redemption, but simply the chance to stay. And slowly, Too Deep began to say yes.